Wei Chen grew up in a narrow townhouse on Minqing Road, in the northern part of Taipei. The street was alive with the bustle of scooters, the scent of fried dumplings from a corner stall, and the hum of neon signs that flickered against the night sky. But inside the Chen household, life followed a rhythm far stricter than the world outside. His father, Mr. Chen, was a man carved from silence and discipline. He had once been a schoolteacher, and his voice still carried the sharpness of chalk against a blackboard. Every evening, he would sit at the wooden dining table, eyes fixed on Wei Luan's report cards, red pen in hand. 92 is not 100, he would mutter, circling the numbers with heavy strokes. His mother, Madam Li, was no softer. She demanded perfection, not only in studies but in behavior. The neighbors praised her for raising a well-mannered son, but they never saw the hours he spent practicing the violin until his fingertips bled, or the way his tears were dismissed with a cold, "Stop being weak." At 10 years old, Wei Luan already understood that mistakes were unforgivable. He learned to hide his drawings under the bed, sketching in secret when he should have been revising his mathematics. He learned to smile politely at family gatherings, even as a storm raged within him. The house on Minqing Road was filled with the scent of incense from the family altar, the ticking of the old wall clock, and the weight of unspoken words. Each room carried an expectation. The bedroom meant study. The living room meant practice. The dining table meant silence unless spoken to. One night, as the city lights blinked through the curtains, Wei Luan lay awake listening to the muffled argument of his parents. His father's voice rose like a whip, his mother's like a blade. They were not fighting about money or work. They were fighting about him. He heard his name spat out like an accusation. Wei Luan closed his eyes, pulling the blanket over his head. In that moment, he realized something that would follow him for years to come. He was not simply their son. He was their project. And projects could not afford to fail. By the time Wei Luan turned 12, his world had shrunk to the narrow lines of sheet music and the scratch of bow against string. The violin was not his choice. It was his mother's dream, pressed into his hands like a burden disguised as an instrument. Every afternoon, while his classmates played basketball in the schoolyard or raced their scooters through the lanes, Wei Luan sat in the dimly lit living room. The curtains were always drawn, shutting out the laughter of the outside world. His mother stood over him, tapping her fingernail against the metronome, each tick a command that could not be ignored. "Again," she would say when his bow faltered. "Again," when a note wavered off key. And when his shoulders trembled with exhaustion, her voice sharpened. "Do not stop until it is perfect." Perfection was an unreachable shore, yet he was forced to swim towards it endlessly. His fingers blistered, calluses forming and breaking until the strings cut into raw skin. He learned to swallow the sting of pain, to bury his tears beneath clenched teeth. At school, his teachers praised him for discipline, his classmates envied his talent, but none of them saw the truth. Behind every flawless recital was a boy who had traded his childhood for applause that never reached his heart. Sometimes, in the stillness between practice sessions, he would glance at the window. The world outside glowed with colors he was forbidden to touch. He imagined what it might feel like to join his friends, to laugh without fear of failure, to play without an audience waiting to judge. But those thoughts vanished the moment footsteps echoed in the hallway. One evening, as the cicadas buzzed outside, Wei Luan let his bow drop in silence. His arms ached, his chest heaved. For a moment, he simply sat, staring at the worn wood of the violin resting in his lap. It was not music he felt in that moment. It was chains. And in the stillness, a shadow of defiance flickered in his eyes. The summer of Wei Luan's 13th year brought no freedom. While his classmates roamed the night markets, he sat beneath the cold light of the dining room lamp. His father's shadow loomed over him, bent across the report cards spread on the table. A red pen scratched across the paper. 93 in mathematics, 89 in science. The marks bled like wounds under his father's gaze. "Unacceptable," Mr. Chen muttered, circling the numbers until the paper tore. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "You are lazy. You are careless. Do you want to shame this family?" The words pierced deeper than any punishment. Wei-Lun lowered his head, his knuckles white around the pencil he still held. He did not argue. He did not cry. He simply listened, because silence was safer than truth. That night, as the city lights flickered against the window, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. The red ink swam before his eyes. Every number, every circle, every word was carved into his memory. He learned something that night. Praise was fragile. Disappointment was permanent. At 14, Wei-Lun began sneaking moments of escape. After late lessons, he walked slowly through the back alleys of Zhongshan district, letting the neon lights wash over him like stolen sunlight. He lingered by a street vendor, the smell of grilled squid and pepper cakes filling the air. He watched teenagers huddled around arcade machines, laughter spilling into the night. For a fleeting moment, he imagined stepping into their world. But then he remembered the ticking clock at home, the sound of the violin waiting in its case, and the cold eyes of his father. He never joined them. He only watched from the shadows, his hands clenched in his pockets. One evening, a group of boys noticed him. They called out, waving, inviting him over. Wei-Lun froze, heart racing. He wanted to move, to answer, to belong. But his feet betrayed him. He turned away, walking into the darkness of another alley. The laughter behind him grew faint. His silence became a prison even in freedom. By 15, the weight of expectation grew heavier. Every test, every rehearsal, every competition felt like a noose tightening around his neck. One evening, his mother discovered a sketchbook hidden beneath his mattress. Inside were drawings of temples, night markets, faces from the alleys. Each page pulsed with the colors of a world he longed to touch. Her voice trembled with fury. "This is nonsense. You waste your time while others work. Art will not feed you. Burn it." She hurled the sketchbook across the room. The glass of the window cracked as it struck. Silence followed, sharp and unforgiving. That night, Wei-Lun stood before the shards glittering on the floor. His heart ached with a quiet rebellion. For the first time, he wondered if the life chosen for him was not his own. At 16, he found refuge by the Tamsui River. After long nights of practice, he slipped out of the house, walking until the city lights softened into rippling reflections on the water. There, he allowed himself to breathe. He sketched in secret, the riverbank his canvas, the stars his only witness. Each line he drew felt like a whisper of freedom, fragile but alive. One night, as the wind rustled the reeds, he whispered aloud, "One day I will leave." The river carried his words into the dark, as though promising to keep his secret safe. At 17, Wei-Lun performed at the National Concert Hall. His bow danced flawlessly across the strings, the audience erupting in applause. His parents sat in the front row, their faces stern but proud. Yet on the stage, as the spotlight burned, Wei-Lun felt hollow. Each cheer echoed like an empty shell. He bowed, smiled, and played the role his parents had carved for him. But inside, he thought only of the river, the sketches, and the life waiting beyond the applause. The pressure reached its peak during the university entrance exams. His father demanded top scores, his mother demanded victory in every competition. The hours stretched into nights without sleep, his body trembling under the strain. One evening, his father's voice thundered, "You will not fail. You cannot fail." Something inside Wei-Lun snapped. The violin slipped from his hands, crashing against the floor. The strings wailed. The wood splintered. "I am not your project," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I am not your puppet." For the first time, silence fell upon the Chan household. At 18, Wei-Lun packed his sketches into a worn satchel. The city lay before him, vast and alive. His parents' voices echoed in his mind, but he did not turn back. He stood at the threshold of the house on Minxing Road, the door creaking behind him. The smell of incense lingered, the ticking clock counted on, but they no longer bound him. The night market lights glowed ahead, a promise of something unknown. With each step, his heart beat louder, stronger, freer. Years later, Wei would remember the sound of that first step into the city. It was not the applause of the concert hall, nor the sharp words of his father. It was quieter, but stronger. It was the sound of his own choice. The world did not welcome him with open arms. It challenged him, tested him, and at times nearly broke him. But each struggle was his own, not forced upon him. Standing once more by the Tamsui River, sketchbook in hand, he felt the wind carry his breath into the night. The chains had fallen. The boy who once hid in shadows was gone. In his place stood a man, shaped not by red ink or broken glass, but by the courage to walk away.